Hi, this is Donnell Chase, and this is my case study, The Internet Use Violation Threats Over the World Wide Web. First section is problem identification and analysis. First off, what do I know? I know this about Miss Walker. She's a second-year teacher at Roosevelt High School. She specializes in science courses. She's known as a teacher that runs a very structured classroom. Her expectations are extremely high for her students. It's also stated that she holds an undergraduate as well as a master's degree. She's also completed 1 year of postgraduate study. It's also stated that she is not a typical young teacher entering straight out of college because she has this additional schooling. And it's also stated that she is unmarried. What do I know about Principal Forbes? Very successful principal at the most prestigious school in the state. He has a good reputation in the community, very well liked, and has been named Principal of the Year. It's also stated that he only recommends the most highly qualified applicants to the board for hiring. I also know that there are both parent and student concerns about the rigor of Ms. Walker's classes. Parents have been calling the office, fearing students will receive their first low grade ever in all of high school, and this will impact their valedictorian or salutatorian hopes. It's also stated students feel stressed out and very pressured in her class. It's also stated that a large workload is given to students and that parents perceive her instruction as weak. Other factors I considered is that Principal Forbes has spoken to Ms. Walker about reducing stress in the classroom, and it's his opinion that Ms. Walker has done nothing to change her instruction. The problem. Ms. Walker returns from a 3-day weekend trip to her parents' house to find an email suggesting that she click and check out a website. She does this, and when she does, it goes to a website that is written about her. The website uses profanity and makes negative comments about Miss Walker, and the website concludes with the phrase, "Who wants Miss Walker to disappear?" Miss Walker fears for her life. It's suggested that she fears for her life and calls Principal Forbes for help. And this is Sunday evening. She also suggests that a student in her class could have done this because he's been problematic to her and is computer savvy. What do I need to know? If I'm Principal Forbes, I need to know what the email says, when it was sent. I also need to know why Miss Walker did not call the police if she truly felt her life was in danger. I also would like to know if there's any way to track this email. I need to know the origin of the website, if that's traceable. I also want to know if this is something that should be handled by the authorities or if I need to spearhead the investigation. Parts of me thinks that this is a criminal incident that probably should be handled by the police, especially if she's taking this as a death threat. So, plan of action. I have 3 possibilities. First of all, plan 1, I'd contact the authorities. Inform Miss Walker if she feels her life's truly in danger, she needs to alert the proper authorities. Does make Miss Walker disappear really mean a death threat? Is that the students desire her to be fired, removed from school? Maybe that's what disappear means. Either way, it's ambiguous, and it's stated that she's very scared. If the police or other officials take control of this case, I need to cooperate with whatever they need to run their investigation, whether that's student data or any other things. I need to make sure that I am following proper policy and procedure of my district, but also complying with the authorities. Also, I want to keep in communication with Miss Walker throughout this and offer my support professionally and emotionally for her so that she knows that I am working with her, and I don't want her to be afraid for her life or unhappy and afraid at her job. Plan of action 2 would be I would take control of things. I'd inform Miss Walker. I will contact district officials and try to trace the origin of the email and the website. I'd also encourage Miss Walker to start keeping detailed records of her interactions with students and parents, a written log, anything that she feels that she needs to write down. I'd also analyze computer usage at the school, have the IT department look at previous backups of the system and login entries to find if there was a possible connection. At this point, we don't know if this was originated from school or outside of school. And also, I would hold a student assembly with the topic being cyber harassment, bullying, and proper technology use. This would be a good reminder to do anyway without this incident going on. And also, just make this a little bit more out in the open while this is going on. Plan of action 3 might be just watchful waiting. If Miss Walker's comfortable with it, allow the situation to lay low for a while. Now, I'm not sure really if this is a possibility since she says that she's fearing for her life and she's so scared she's going to stay with her parents. She may not want to do this. The reason why I suggest this is I would inform the staff to keep an eye out on social media, listen to student chatter, any rumblings about this. Possibly you might be able to find out the origin of it without too much trouble. You know, sometimes without pressing the details, kids talk, and that would be one way you could possibly get to the bottom of this. And if needed, call students into the office that are in Miss Walker's class to discuss problems they may be having in her class. Not necessarily this incident, but actually listen to them without their parents around and find out exactly what they're feeling and, explain to them maybe some techniques they could use as students to reduce stress. Depending on what approach I took to resolve this case, I would always keep the student's education and their best interest, should remain a top priority to me. Education is obviously what we're all there for, but making sure they feel safe and secure and valued in their educational process is very important. Jumping to conclusions and interrogating students, I don't think is in the best interest of anyone. This will lead to feelings of mistrust among students and staff. Watching student Randy Walker for signs of self-incrimination, not singling him out for questioning, I think is a good way to start. Students might not realize that what they do outside of school can lead to in-school consequences. Education is really vital on this. They may not even know that this could possibly be something that is criminal. I'd want to discuss cyberbullying and cyber harassment and explain it just doesn't have to be between students. It can include teachers, students, administrators, or others. What I was thinking. When I read this case, I found myself thinking, if Miss Walker really feared for her life, why was her first call to the principal at home? That bothers me. I'm just not so sure about this. And there's some other things, and maybe I was reading too much into it. But I was also thinking, how bad her students must feel in her classroom if this kind of website's going to be created. But then I thought maybe it wasn't a student at all. Maybe it was a parent. I also thought about, how this could have gotten so far out of hand. Was it being worked too hard? Was that the problem of the students? Or was it just them being held to an attainable standard that they had never been expected to achieve before? Was she really the bad guy, or was she just doing her job? What I was feeling, this is another part where I'm not quite so sure if I was reading too much into it. I feel sorry for her. I'm sure it hurt her to see this website. It would do that to anyone. So I do feel sorry for her. I also feel that the principal might not have done enough with regard to assisting her with instructional style and delivery. If she didn't take suggestions from him, he should have asked other people to help out, an instructional coach, maybe a partner teacher, a mentor, something like that. And I also found myself wondering, was she really as scared as she claimed to be? A lot of things didn't seem to add up with this part of the scenario. What I was valuing. First off, the education of my students is top priority, and I want them to feel safe, happy, and secure at school at all times. Secondly, I want my staff to know that they can make instructional decisions based on their content area, that parent complaints necessarily doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong in your classroom. It could mean that, but it doesn't have to mean that. And really, am I only concerned about how she runs her classroom just because there were parent complaints? Or are there other things that would lead me to be concerned about her instructional style, delivery, etc.? Lastly, I value safety and well-being of staff and students. Bullying and harassment are not acceptable at any point, whether it's in person, over the internet, etc. I think more needs to be said to staff and students about this matter and get them more educated about that. With social media being as prevalent as it is today, and being able to set up fake accounts, fake emails, fake profiles, I think this kind of thing goes on far more than we might realize. Unresolved issues. It's stated Miss Walker traveled 3 hours one way to visit her parents for the weekend. That seems like a long way to me. After talking to Principal Forbes, she states she'll see him in the morning, but if he needs her, she's spending the night with her mom. I'm assuming that her mom is the same person she just came back from visiting, which is 3 hours away, and I'm wondering how logistically she can pull that off and still be at work the next day. It makes me wonder, really, was she scared of this website? Did she just say that she was scared? Was she looking for sympathy? Did she create this herself? I don't know. I feel bad thinking that, but I have to consider all sides, and that's something that entered my mind when I read this. And was Randy Franks a true person of interest in this case, or does she just perceive him as a troublemaker and she wants to see him out, and this seems to be an easy way to quiet him down? Integrity and ethics. I think my decision not to immediately throw a student under the bus, accuse him of creating the websites, just go in all hard and heavy, shows that I treat all students fairly and equally. Just because he's been a problem to her currently, maybe a problem in the past, doesn't mean that he's responsible for this now. It would be easy to assume that, but not necessarily the right thing to do. Jumping to conclusions and acting without thinking's not a good example of acting with integrity and fairness. It shows students there's no reason to be logical when it comes to solving conflicts and problems. Acting with fairness. I tried to talk to Mrs. Walker about whether this could possibly be a prank or something created by a parent. Going through the proper steps to identify the person behind the website, contacting IT or the police, shows that I'm handling the incident in a fair way. I've also spoken to Ms. Walker about stress relieving techniques and other instructional delivery methods to ease the stress and anxiety her students are feeling. And I've also spoken with parents about how their students feel while in class, but I don't really know whether the students themselves have been spoken to. This would be one more way of being completely fair to all involved. Personal and professional code of ethics. It's stated that parent concerns about class and observations about her lessons have been made, that suggestions have been offered about how to change her instructional delivery. I don't believe that she's been thrown under the bus to parents when they have complained about her working her student too hard, or their students too hard. It'd be easy to play both sides, but it wouldn't be ethical or professional to do so. Sometimes I think that you have to find a way to smooth out things, but also not playing both sides against each other so that you find yourself trapped in the middle. I think that I'd find myself spending a lot of time in her classroom. I'd also ask for assistance with an instructional coach. She could maybe go in and observe or model a lesson, find a mentor teacher, find someone that teaches the same type of content to come in and maybe add some ideas, but also not to make Miss Walker feel threatened that she automatically is doing things wrong. If this kind of thing's going on in all classrooms all the time, as I think walkthroughs and coaching should be, this wouldn't be out of the ordinary necessarily for her. I'd also invite parents in the classroom to observe at any time so they know that there's nothing to hide, and both sides would know that there's nothing to hide. that concludes my case study on this subject of